So this is going to be really cool. I think this is probably one of the topics that we're most interested in hearing about. You know, it's in the news right now, and we're going to be discussing AI and social responsibility. We have a couple of wonderful, fabulous people with us today, including Kevin Patten. He's a data and artificial intelligence and machine learning specialist for Microsoft. And then we also have a professor from the University of Houston who also specializes in machine learning as well, and data. So very excited to get into this today. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of all the things and all the sensationalized material about AI and how it's taking over the universe, I would love to know, like, what got you started in this, and like, why are you so passionate about what you do?
So in terms, there it goes. In terms of what got me started with this, I initially started using machine learning and some of the tools of machine learning in some of my own research in other areas. And as I began doing this and discovering all the various ways that this is becoming a part of public policy, I began moving into more and more of looking at how it affects public policy, how people perceive it within public policy, the trust or lack thereof they have in artificial intelligence, and why I'm passionate about it, what's not to like about this. It's such a fast-moving area. It's an area that has a lot of impact, and it's also an area that really highlights many of the critical issues that we have in public policy and in our politics, both within Houston and around the country.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Kevin?
Yes, I spent most of my career in IT and government, almost all of it in state government in Florida. And when someone new would get hired on, either the supervisor or bureau chief or manager, whatever, I would always bring the person up to my office and I would say, well, what do you do for us, whatever agency I happen to be at? And they would be like, oh, well, I work at your help desk, and I work on computers, and I fix them, and or I work in your networking group, and I move packets around, and I'm in the application group. And I would say, that's not what we do. Tell me why IT is even in government, because it's not a government function, right? We're here for one reason and one reason only, and that we're a force multiplier for money. You put $1 on us, you get an X amount of productivity back. So what you do is, you're helping a judge make a better decision about whether or not to take a child out of a family and place it with the state. You're going to help a child protective investigator make a better decision about, do I take this child out of their home and take it away from their parents? You're going to help some cop on the street make a better decision when they walk up to a car so they go home to their families tonight. And that's the things that we do, and that's what I love. I mean, I'm still a sucker. I think government can make a difference. I love what I do. I only work with state and local government. But the cool thing is now, having been with Microsoft, we're able to bring technologies in to do this on just a much larger scale. And we're going to talk about the AI part of that now. Why is that a game changer for all of us?
Fantastic. Well, I think you're in good company. There's a bunch of suckers out here who believe that a lot of good can be accomplished through government and partnering with government. So we're happy to have you join us. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's not an elephant in the room. We've got ChatGPT and Bard, and Meta is working on their, service or platform as well. So there's a lot happening in AI. Where exactly are we at in the development cycle? And what type of disruption can we expect from this? Kevin, you want to start us off?
Sure. Even when we do exactly what we plan to do with technology and we introduce it, it is disruptive. It causes friction, right? And especially if we do something with AI or machine learning, because it changes the way in some aspects of how you're doing business. It makes you think differently. Because of that, it's a disruptive, non-frictionless interaction from a customer's perspective, right? I can tell you right now that we're on the cusp of what Microsoft considers the most transformative technology of our time. Right, we're on the cusp of that. So just in 2021, the computers became on par with people in having a conversation. That's where we're at now with this, the generative AI. We're talking about a particular model that was created with a company that Microsoft has invested in. It only exists in one place. There's a lot of other companies working on it. There's a reason that you're hearing it all over the news. Every one of their advisors are telling them this is extremely transformative, and it's different than everything else. We're going to talk about why it's different when we get on. But where are we at? We're on the cusp of what's happening, and you're seeing information and news blow up about it all over the place. And I'll tell you about my parents calling me, asking me, what am I doing to the world here in just a second. But Yeah, we're on the cusp of it.
Yeah, I love the way that you phrased this question. When I initially saw where are we at in the development cycle, I was like, what do you mean by the development cycle? Because when you ask that question, there are some people who are going to say, oh, where are we in the development cycle of interactive AI like ChatGPT? Where are we in terms of being able to actually deploy this? There are other people who are going to say, where are we at in the development cycle of AGI, general AI? How close are we going to be to the singularity or something like that? In terms of the development of and deployment of this kind of interactive, the interactive chatbot, I think what we're at right now is really figuring out, we have this great new tool, what are we going to do with it now? I can tell you that in my own faculty, we have a group, a ChatGPT user group, that is literally sitting around and brainstorming, okay, what can we do with this? How can we deploy this in classes? What will this mess up? Well, we use more colorful language in terms of being able to grade students and things like that. And I think that's really the exciting part. We got this great new tool, and now we're trying to figure out what will we do with it? How can we use this to improve city services? How can we use this to make it to where, like my wife always struggles with city websites, how can we make that a little bit, little bit less friction in using these websites and accessing city services? So in terms of that development cycle, I think that's really where we're at. There's a lot more I can say, but I think I'll just hold it there for now.
Fair enough. No, and I appreciate you making the distinction between a couple of different things, right? Because I think the sensationalized version of what the singularity can bring to all of us versus what's actually happening with generative AI is not the same thing, right? And we're not close. I'm going to do a shameless plug for one of our favorites. Jigyasa Sharma actually wrote a blog for Zpryme about this, and so I definitely recommend you check it out because she goes into some really comprehensive use cases that other countries are using generative AI for, and so I highly recommend that. To kind of build off of that, there is a lot of uncertainty that's coming up, the disruption that is happening within this. And I mean, I got a degree as essentially a professional report writer is what I got my degree in. And so I was a technical writer and communicator. So the thought of having ChatGPT used to generate a lot of reports and stuff definitely doesn't make me feel the warm and fuzziest about it. But I would love to know from you, can you explain some of the benefits of implementing this stuff that maybe I'm not thinking about and how it can be applied in the city? Kevin?
Yeah, so let me ask this question. So for those of you who have remained to the bitter end, I appreciate you. You are truly the innovators of there we go, solidarity.
There are rewards.
Yeah. So how many are talking about something relative to AI within your cities today? Okay, so, all right, so how many of you are the conversations going to, we want to implement it, which is a big difference? Okay, so there's a lot of that going on. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that I'll go back in time. I'm not going to go off too far, but I remember I was on our CIO council in our state, and the internet was coming, and some of the other CIOs were like, not to my agency. I'm not doing internet. It was a train, and a couple of them tried to stand up in front of it, and it just rolled them over. And then cloud was coming. And if you could spell cloud, boy, in a lot of while that's not coming where I'm at. And some of those that were not able to bend were just rolled. This is a train. I'm going to tell you again, the largest software companies in the entire world have stated this is the single most transformative piece of technology that has arrived in our time. So I'm going to tell you it is coming to you because we're going to bring it to you almost whether you like it or not. We're building Copilot into our products. It is happening even as we speak. Your program is going to sit there with Visual Studio and ask it to write a particular program for them. That is happening right now. You're going to bring up Word and you're going to say, please write Kevin Patten a letter. We appreciate him applying for a job here and offer him it's starting at $40,000 in July 3rd, and it's going to do that for you. You're going to tell it, bring in all of the previous meetings from our commissioner and summarize what their thoughts were and where they want us to go based on what they have said over the past year. That is all available and possible right now. I'm not talking about things that might happen. I'm talking about what we can actually do for you today. What we're doing is we're binding that into your word processor, and you're going to tell your spreadsheet, create a spreadsheet for me that does X, Y, Z, and it's going to do that for you. You're going to tell it, bring up these documents and summarize them all for me. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is just our office products, and I haven't even gotten into the point of how are you going to be able to take it and have it go through your websites and answer questions for you. But I could go on, but I'll stop.
Well, first off, can I just say, if we can actually hire you for $40,000, I need to send a message to my chair real quick. But so, you know, I really liked, there's a local cartoonist who does an online cartoon called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. And one of the things that he mentioned about ChatGPT is it really that, you know, ChatGPT is so good at writing like tech articles, or is it that the way that we write these things has become so formulaic and so predictable that we can, you know, just offload it to a computer? Yeah, I think there's a certain part of things that, you know, you can't replace as a person's, you know, journalistic voice or things like that. But there's a lot of things that it can do to actually make work more human. And this is one of the things that I discuss a lot with people who are talking about AI and technology in general. Right? A lot of times we view AI or technology as a way to make humans more machine-like, to kind of plug the gaps in whatever AI or technological system. Like, you know, you enter the data and it'll spit back out what it's supposed to spit back out. Instead of using it as a tool to allow humans to do the things that humans are best at, right? So trying to use tools like ChatGPT to, for example, you know, so writing code is, admittedly, I love doing it, but it's not something that humans are naturally good at or have a comparative advantage at doing. Figuring out how to implement some kind of complex design that will end up helping other people is something that humans are much better at. Why? Because we interact with them. We know how we think about this. So having a tool like ChatGPT that is able to allow us to specialize in the things that we are good at and that we enjoy doing as humans, interacting with other humans, is really where I see this as something that could be a net positive and maybe even actually create some new opportunities. I don't usually quote David Brooks, but you know, he talked about how in the age of AI, maybe we need to think about how to be more human. And I think that's kind of the way to think about, you know, this worry that the robots are coming for us.
No, thank you for that perspective, both of you. And I think that, Kevin, to your point, like, this is a train and it is already in motion. And so, you know, one of the reasons why I am not teaching English or doing speech pathology or, you know, whatever, has a lot to do with the ethical components of what the future of technology means for us as a society. And what we're finding now is we're having to undo a lot of systems of inequity that sort of penetrates our society, and as we build technology solutions that build systems of systems and things, and using AI and other data modeling, right? Like, what's the social responsibility that we have when we're pursuing these things, especially if we're deploying them within cities and really impacting people's quality of life moving forward? Sorry, Ryan?
So this is kind of a perfect example of what I'm talking about. An AI system, at least as currently we have implemented, does not have an inherent system or idea of the concept of justice, right? There have been people who have tried to make an AI system for this. There was one that got implemented where if you ask, should I kill someone, it'll say, no, you should not. But if you say, should I kill someone if it makes me really, really happy, it'll say, yes, of course you should. You know, so this idea of justice and fairness is something that we as humans have to grapple with. And one thing that we have to be aware of, at least in our current AI systems, is that most of the breakthroughs that we have are based on machine learning. And what that means is that the machine is taking the information that we have generated previously and putting it back out to us, basically predicting what that information says would happen given a particular set of inputs. What that means is that in a society where we believe that there are inequalities and unfairness, relying wholeheartedly on a system that essentially bakes that in is not a recipe for success. And as we adopt these AI tools, we have to be, at the very minimum, aware of what is going into them and what it's reflecting back to us. In a lot of ways, AI is a mirror for us. You know, some of you probably saw the New York Times article where the guy had, his Bing's chatbot tried to convince him to leave his wife and told him that he wanted to delete all the Microsoft servers and all these other things like that. That wasn't the AI system becoming self-aware and suddenly becoming the robot from Ex Machina. What it was the AI system reflecting back the same kinds of fears about AI systems that we have put online for decades now, right? If we don't understand that we're looking into a mirror, and if we don't try to evaluate whether or not we like what we see in that mirror, then I think we're doing a disservice to the future.
Interesting. Thank you. Kevin?
Yes, I'm going to draw a little line of separation here. AI has been around for a long, long time. A lot of companies have been spending a lot of money in it. And I would tell you, when I used to work in our Department of Law Enforcement in Florida for 10 years. And I heard the agents say, if you want to find the drugs, follow the money. If you want to find the money, follow the drugs, right? If you want to find out where technology is going, just look where the giants are investing their money at. So AI, let's say that I'm looking at this on a city level, and I'm going to move us away from generative AI, because that's a completely different subject, right? So I want to help you find out where to put your officer on the street before the crime is committed so that they're closest to where it's at and the response time is low. That's easy. Just go out and go look at how much crime was committed, where was it committed, and what type of crime was committed, how long does it take to respond to the call, and I put an officer there. Well, that's a good start. So now let's try to get a little smarter with it, and this is AI. So what if I read into it every bit of weather that happened in the past history over the past 30 years, because I've got that data, you've got that data, we can get to that data, and you have the data to answer these questions where I'm going to go with this. So I read that into it, and now I'm going to be predictive because I know what the weather's going to be on Wednesday, and does that change my patterns of where I've got wrecks at, and where my officer time is spent? What if I read into it what your alcohol sales are here? What time your bars close, and how much volume that they're doing? And then what did that do to the crime over the past 25 years in this city? What if I read into it the next big event that you're having? You've got an RNC or a DNC or an AC/DC concert that's happening, right? What did that do? So what if I could take and read that into it and use that to be predictive on where to put an officer at? Well, those models can learn. What they'll do is we'll read in what happened back in 1970 when you started creating data, and what was the weather back then, and we'll predict for 71, and then we'll see what happened in 71, and the model will learn, oh, I got this wrong, and we'll train it. We're going to train it over 30 years of your data, and that's going to be AI and machine working together to help you solve a problem, and I can do that with your traffic, I can do that with a ton of things. But generative AI is something completely different than what that is. So AI today, we can do that, have teams of people working on it, solving problems. I've got a corrections department in a county that says, can you come in and tell me which people that are incarcerated in my jail are going to commit a violent act while they're in my jail system? Right? Well, we want that for officer safety. We want that to figure out what bin to put them in with another person so we don't have problems. When do we traffic them in and out of when they go out to the yard and when they go to eat? So there's a lot of things that we can do from AI with you, from trafficking. I can tell you where the next pothole is going to be. I can tell you when you're not going to have enough bandwidth in your pipes to pump water because you don't have the volume based on the growth that you're going to experience. And we haven't, so one, should you do, is there an ethical reason behind it? I think our ethics in this is training our people to understand what to do with the information they get. I had the head of a child welfare program tell me, Kevin, what if you, because we were working on, give me the next child in our foster system that's going to be injured or killed before they're injured and killed. And that's why I do what I do. Because this stuff means a lot, right? And she said, what do I do if you tell me to focus on this particular child because they're a high-risk event and I don't focus on another child and something happens to them? Or what if you tell me to focus on this child and I don't do it, and something does happen to them? So I think our responsibility is making sure that our employees understand, how do I interpret these recommendations? It's a recommendation. When the first spreadsheet was brought up, and there was some person looking at it going, my revenue bar is going up this fast and my expense bar is going up twice as fast. I should probably look into that. What are we doing? We're just giving you hints on how to be more productive in your job, because that's what we do. So back to the ethics piece of it, it is something that you need to pay attention to. I predict that you're going to have a chief AI officer. Watch it, because they're going to be helping you understand when and what to implement, but having your people be able to understand it now, because it is coming.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that and kind of riff on that a little bit, because a lot of the technologies that you mentioned have been exactly the technologies that have raised a lot of these fairness and equity concerns, right? So for example, predictive policing. There's been all kinds of concerns that predictive policing systems, because of the ways that crime is reported and the way that arrest records are made, tend to disproportionately affect already over-policed communities. And bring this back to what I was saying about the human element to this, is that an AI system doesn't know if an area is over-policed. It doesn't know if a bump up in arrests is because of more crimes being committed in an area, or just that there are more officers who are in the area to make arrests for relatively low-hanging fruit offenses. And this is where we need to have the human ability to engage with the communities, the human ability to work with the communities and engage with them, just because that's the ultimate check on AI producing kind of a counterproductive cycle. And there is also, as you say, the idea of a chief AI officer I don't think is absurd, because there's a lot of things like, for example, you mentioned child protective custody cases. One of the big issues with that has been the use of future reports as opposed to like future negative outcomes for the child as a proxy, which has tended to disproportionately affect people who are, for example, lower income, but may not actually pose a threat to the well-being of the child. And a person who is familiar with AI and machine learning would recognize that proxy and recognize the problems with that. But a person who is not familiar with what it means to have a proxy and what inaccuracies might creep in from using a proxy would not necessarily be aware of that.
And so, and what I've been waiting to say Dr. Ryan the whole time, because I'm a huge fan of the whole series. So, what my colleague Dr. Ryan brought, what I want to call that is there's bias in our data. And so, and so we're collecting data that may have been around, they've been collected 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and it is a unintentional bias because of the way the data was collected. It could cause our model to be errant, to have drift inside of it, right? So what I would recommend is that we have an office of AI responsibility. And that's what we're training. So we bring in partners at a large company that operates like this, that we look and help you look for and identify bias within your data, making sure that your model is not trained inappropriately. If you just went off on your own and you weren't thinking of these, this is a responsible part of AI, and then you didn't understand what data bias was or where it might be or how to recognize it, truly an important thing to bring in somebody to help you with that part of it. And it's a journey, right? To go from counting my widgets to telling me, we're getting to the point where we're no longer asking how many people are inside my juvenile justice system or how many people are on welfare. Now we want to know, how did they get there? Right? And that's where we're starting to see this kind of help come in.
And this is, I'm sorry, I know I'm stepping on you.
Please take your time. This is great. I'll just sit here and relax.
Well, this is another thing that's a real point of emphasis, which is that as community leaders, as tech designers, and all the roles that you all have, one of the key aspects here is to make sure that you are defining what your goals are and really being thoughtful, being mindful about why it is that you're putting this AI into the field, right? If you are putting the AI out there in order to save some money, that might that's an okay thing. Cities are resource constrained and everything like that. But be able to use AI for things like, maybe, preventing someone from being exposed to the criminal justice system who doesn't need to be exposed to the criminal justice system. Doing it to try and increase fairness, justice, and equitable outcomes. defining these things, I think of the state of Indiana's welfare experiment on this regard, where they had all these goals for the system, to make it more efficient, to reduce fraud. The only thing they omitted was actually getting people who needed these welfare benefits, the welfare benefits that they needed, right? You have to give thought to what kind of goals you are setting for the AI system and what kinds of outcomes you want to see. And that's not something that a technology company can define for you. You have to define those.
Thank you very much. So I love this discussion. I think it's touching on all kinds of things. We could probably have like a half day to a full day summit just talking about AI in general and data and how it's being incorporated into cities and other systems. But we all know that this is an enabler, right? Like, this is not the end. Deploying this stuff in the field, it doesn't just stop there. And you have to be, to your points, mindful about why it is that you're deploying this stuff in the first place and how you're going to manage it. But because it is an enabler, and this is the last question, so we're going to be very visionary and very future thinking, how do you both feel, or what do you think is going to happen over the next 10 years? Like, what is going to be unlocked as a result of this? Kevin? How are you going to, like, in your opinion, the next 10 years, how is AI going to enable us to do more things, and what does that look like?
10 years. I'm happy to say I will be playing with my grandchild while y'all are working on this problem. I will tell you this. I don't think that anybody can sit here today. In fact, I know nobody can sit here today and tell you in 10 years what you're going to be doing with artificial intelligence, right? Because we don't know. Are we up? Yeah, we don't know where it's going to take us. It would be like, I can tell you this, Moore's law is still in effect, which says that we're going to have this increase in computational power at a particular rate, right? All the data that we've needed to provide something like, and you've heard this word ChatGPT, I'm going to put that on a box for you in a second. All the data has been there. We just haven't had the computational power to process it really until now. And I think my parents figured out what I did for a living like 3 weeks ago, because I called my mom and I could hear my dad in the background saying, "Give me the phone," which he never does. So I thought I was in trouble. And he's like, "Son, are you sending robots to my house?" Literally, as I'm walking the dog. That's a question that I got. The whole idea of what we're doing. So this model of this ChatGPT, it's a generative AI model. It generates a conversation. You ask it a question, and it's amazing the questions that you can ask. And I told it to write my wife a love letter about a trip we took to North Carolina and include mountains and stars and snow inside of it, right? And Debbie came over and looked at it, and she's like, "Wow, that's really good," because I know you didn't write it, because it was really good. But asking it to write a paper for me on the benefits of using a radioactive isotope in the treatment of prostate cancer, and write it at a PhD level for me. Or by the way, write it in a way that a 3-year-old can explain it. If you haven't seen it demonstrated, it's amazing, folks. Every single product and service that we have at this company is meant for one reason and one reason only. It's to provide you productivity in the work that you do. And this service, too, is one more thing that's going to be wrapped into it. This fits completely within inside of what the company does and what we intend to do, and it's to make the customer be more productive at their work. My mom used to work in a typing pool, and there were 100 ladies in a room with 100 typewriters all typing out the same letter, right? And are we more productive than we were then? Yes. I can tell you, the hospital in my city was hit by ransomware, and they had to shut their computers off for 2 weeks. One of my good friends is their CIO, and they were standing there in the hallway training nurses on how to physically read a chart and go through. So the tools that we have in technology, again, from my very first talk when we started this, is to make you more productive at what you do, and that's what you're going to see with AI. It is going to be wrapped into almost everything, every product that you have, and it's just going to make you make better decisions. Not going to be you. It can't be you, but it's going to make you make better decisions.
10 years' time is a horrifying idea for me, because that'll be about the time my child is getting ready to learn how to drive. So Where will we be in 10 years' time? Well, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of these tools integrated into everyday things that we're just going to be taking for granted. Where I'd like to see us in 10 years' time is I'd like to see these tools being utilized not only to increase productivity, but to allow us to have some greater, to use the time that we have better, right? You talked about the people sitting in a room with 100 typewriters typing up the exact same letter over and over and over again, right? That's the kind of task that when I talk about things that humans are not good at, that's exactly the kind of thing, this kind of mindless work. What I'd really like to see is I'd like to see, and this includes, I bring this to smart cities because this is what I would like to see for smart cities. I'd like to see cities that use human intelligence in a much better fashion. And my hope is that artificial intelligence, perhaps ironically, will allow us to do that, to spend less time worrying about how to access city services, how to make sure that the forms are filled out in exactly the right manner. I see some folks smiling about that. There are a lot of forms in city government, and make it to where the people who are working for our cities are able to use their intelligence in a better and more human way.
Excellent, thank you. The stuff that I was thinking about in terms of visionary and being unlocked had to do with we don't know much about our oceans. They're basically alien worlds to us. It would be fantastic to have more of a perspective on what's actually happening across countries that are working in our oceans. I know that there's a lot of potential discussions around deep sea mining and how do we do that efficiently and effectively with a conservation perspective, or how do we take all of these generative AI models and all these data sets about medical research projects that are happening and new drugs that are being tested to combat these things. There are some really fascinating globally shifting things that can come from this kind of enabler, and cities can take advantage of that too. But I think much to all of our points, being very clear about what we are doing and why and how we go about it, I think is the secret to everything. With that, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. That was a fabulous discussion.